We have multiple Toronto Raptors updates specifically regarding Chris Boucher, who of course is an impending free agent this summer, and a lot of people have turned their heads and expected him to be gone after he was benched for the back half of the season for the Toronto Raptors in order to get an extended look at some of the younger players on the roster. However, we have some new reports and new updates in regards to Chris Boucher's future, which shed some light on what we can expect for the veteran forward in terms of his future with the Toronto Raptors. So we'll discuss what these reports are saying, what it means to the Toronto Raptors, and frankly, the pros and cons of keeping around the fan favorite, the Canadian-owned Chris Boucher, because while he's one of our more talented forwards, as we saw the back half of the season, didn't play, and there's more of a glut at the forward position this year. So lots of stuff to break down in this video, but folks, I want to thank you guys. You guys have been crushing it, hitting that subscribe button. Let's even get 37,400 by the end of the week. I appreciate every single one of you trying to hit 38,000 by the NBA draft lottery. So again, appreciate every single one of you, because I know everyone is excited about this upcoming off season, and one of the more important players that we have to make some decisions on, and news is going to come out about, is Chris Boucher, who is a player that, frankly, is close to a lot of Toronto Raptors fans' hearts. He's been on the team for a very long time. He's the last remaining championship player out there on this team, and that was on the 2019 championship team. And we've seen him go from a bench guy that was hoisting up those shots at the end of games and knocking down threes with the undeniable confidence to a player that has become a legitimate NBA rotation player and one of the more upper echelon in his up seasons where he's up. Is in a perennial candidate out there for Sixth Man of the Year. He's never gotten it, never got super close, but has definitely been a spark plug off the bench for the Toronto Raptors. So what's going on with Chris Boucher? Because, of course, as I had discussed, he was benched for a large chunk of the back half of the season, and people expect, okay, writing's on the wall, Chris Boucher's gone. And Masai Ujiri had some interesting quotes in regards to Chris Boucher's future, saying that how this was a tough one. And I think we all had communication with Chris Boucher. I think Chris was an incredible professional. It's a tough place to put him in, but I was really impressed when he played. He did a really good job this year, and everybody knows it, who Chris Boucher is. I think the value of what he is still tall and stands here with us and stands all over the NBA. Chris Boucher is the longest tenured player for the Toronto Raptors, and I think now our team, and he is basically like family. So I think our communication has always been great. It always will be. We spent a lot of time with him yesterday, and I know Bobby and Darko have spent a lot of time with him over the year and over the years. But Chris is also a competitor. It's a tough situation for him to be in. Of course, a lot of referring to how Darko Rajaković needed to make some tough decisions because players like Jonathan Mobile, the younger guys, needed some extra run, and that came at the expense of Chris Boucher, who is a known commodity to the Toronto Raptors. We know what he's able to provide. We know what he's good at, and he was pretty adamant, Masai Ujiri, in this presser to say, hey, his value hasn't changed. This wasn't a situation where we're benching him in a contract year and then he's going to lose a ton of money. People around the league know his value, as well as the Toronto Raptors know his value. So that means, the subliminal text behind that is essentially, hey, the Toronto Raptors know what he's worth. They know what he is, and still hold him in high regard. Now, maybe he's just saying that with players across the league because, of course, looking at it from the outside in perspective, a forward that is getting benched in the back half of the season on a team that is overtly trying to lose games, trying to capture the flag, trying to do these types of things, that's not a good look. And I think Masai Ujiri is pretty adamant that that's not the case, maybe to save face, maybe because he knows insider information, but that's what's going on with Chris Boucher. And then he also went on to say this in regards to, I don't know what Jonathan Mobo is. I don't know who Jamison Battle is in terms of where they are going. I have to put them in a position to start to find out players they can become, and that's throwing them into games. Throwing them in, and giving them the opportunity. I only give an example of those two, but there are more on the roster that we really needed to find out about. So it's a tough place to put him in regards to Chris Boucher, but he was a great sport. I know he's a competitor. So it's always going to be tough, but I think the value still stays the same, and we'll treat it like that. So you see that quote there, we'll treat it like that. So just because he was benched, just because he was on, in the doghouse for the back half of the year, that doesn't mean the Toronto Raptors are going to try to undercut him in salary, undercut him in this. And basically to build off of this in terms of reports that have come out, Michael Grange revealed that according to multiple sources, there's mutual interest in having Chris Boucher return for his 8th season in Toronto. So essentially, there's interest from Chris Boucher, there's interest from the Toronto Raptors to have Boucher back on the roster. And this is very, very interesting because, of course, we can take a look at the contract situations. Chris Boucher is the only impending free agent of note Garrett Temple as well, out there on this team. That, Chris Boucher is the guy that is a rotation player for the Toronto Raptors. The rest of the team is locked up. And you can see for a squad that was taking, of course, will be better with Brandon Ingram, all the guys healthy next season. But a squad that wasn't competing for a championship this year is pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive there right now. And Chris Boucher, as Masai said, right, is going to be given his worth by the Toronto Raptors or one of these other organizations. So, expect him to be in the $10, $15 million per year range. I mean, we can take a look at his stats, right? Well, this season, 10 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 36% from the three-point line, and not old and washed by any means. He's 32, still in the prime of his career, shot 39% of the corner threes. He provides a very effective, backline defense at the forward position. Doesn't play center, but he blocks shots just coming over from the weak side. Chris Boucher is a player that is very, very effective out there on the basketball court and had some really high highs over the course of this season. So he's going to command at least in the 8 figures in terms of salary range in the new NBA and the new contract structure. So that is something the Toronto Raptors have to look at and have to say, hey, whether it's a one-year deal, multi-year contract, that does affect your flexibility. So the tougher part of this, though, beyond the money side behind all that, is basically how this affects the young guys that you spent all of the back half of the season developing. Because take a look at the roster now. Not only do you still have the young guys out here on this roster, you have more players coming back from injury, and then you also add Brandon Ingram into the mix, who didn't play a single second for the Toronto Raptors this year, who plays a similar position, forward position to Chris Boucher. 3-4, Boucher's more of a 4. So that is something to really come to terms with, because frankly, if we look how the young guys played in the back half of the season, Jonathan Mobo in the last 10 games of the year averaged 11 points per game, 8 rebounds and 5 assists, and 1.4 steals and 1 block a night. Like, that is some legitimate stats. Again, 30 minutes per game, so I don't imagine, regardless of what's going on, he's going to be played 30 minutes per night. But still, in his rookie season for a second-round pick, those are very, very impressive numbers. There's still a lot to be developed with Jonathan Mobo, but those are, I don't want to, I keep bringing it up, like Draymond Green-like stats, right? He fills up the stat sheet. He does a lot of stuff out there on the basketball court. You have Jamison Battle, who in his last 10 games of the season, or roughly 13 games, 11 points per game, shot 40% from behind the three-point line, averaged 4 rebounds, again, 28 minutes, so extended run there for Jamison Battle. And then you also have Ochai Agbaji, who in that stretch of time as well, the back half of the season averaged 13 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 40% from the three-point line. So in that extended run, all these guys, Chris Boucher did not get an extended run, but Jonathan Mobo, Ochai Agbaji, Jamison Battle, all players that are fighting for those backup forward positions, they are all playing very, very well when they were given extended opportunities. So that leads to question, what's the real sort of position for Chris Boucher? Because there's pros to keeping him, of course. Chris Boucher, he's the most proven, reliable bench forward, even though Battle, Agbaji, as well as, Jonathan Bobo have shown flashes in the back half of the season. It's against weaker competition, and they're younger. The Raptors are trying to compete next year. Chris Boucher is certainly a guy that's more reliable in regards to a player you can count on to have an effective impact on the game. Provides a mix of floor spacing and defense, whereas Battle's more one-dimensional in the shooting front. Mobo is defense and building some different areas of his game in those fronts, but Ochai, the 3, those are all guys that are going to need minutes, and then you also get a veteran presence and played in big games. Chris Boucher, it's undeniable. You talk to Sixers fans, you talk to Celtics fans, they all wonder how Chris Boucher isn't a first ballot Hall of Fame caliber player, because he just goes off in some of these big matchups. So that's again, hyperbole. Don't take that too seriously, but a lot of these fans of other teams that play big games against the Toronto Raptors, they're impressed with Chris Boucher, the player. But the cons, of course, involve age doesn't align with the core players, so he's a little bit older. He's going to be a higher price than a lot of the rooks that we have out there on the roster. And then there's a glut at the forward position. Not only you have Scottie Barnes, of course, RJ's playing a bit of forward, but you're integrating Brandon Ingram out there in the mix now, and then you have minutes that have to go around with similar spots for Ochai Agbaji, for Jamison Battle, for Jonathan Mobo, all next season. They're younger guys that are trying to take those leaps, trying to take those jumps, and Chris Boucher, coming in, if you're going to sign him, don't just bench him again. You can't do the same thing you did at the back half of this season. You need to actually give him run if you are going to give him a contract. So it's a tough situation for the Toronto Raptors to be in, but we'll keep you updated on all the latest regarding Chris Boucher, what it means for his future of the Toronto Raptors. Just subscribe to Raptors Digest so you don't miss a single thing. Anyways, you guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.